All right, guys, welcome back. Practice Underwater. This is your host, Dr. Matt Greeno. Today, we got a guest who is actually a repeat guest. He was on our show in season 1 during our anonymous buyer section. He's back now after he's owned the practice for a few years and really struggling with the direction he wants to take the practice. He's currently a solo provider, thinking maybe a group practice model, but he's also dealing with a lot of issues in the practice. He bought it at 1.8 million. The practice is now doing less than that. There's a lot of guilt around that, and the owner is really in a kind of a holding pattern on which direction to go. So we delve into a lot of those topics in this first episode and more in the second episode. We have George with us today. George, good morning.
Good morning, Matt. How's everything going?
It's beautiful. Saturday morning podcasting. Can't get better than this.
I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. I think one thing we probably don't do a good enough job of talking about is acquisitions where after the fact there is a dip. And this is definitely the first example that we've had on air talking about it. Also, this is the first time we've ever had a guest anonymous on our show twice. I don't think that'll happen again. There's only one other person that it could happen with. This is from season 2, by the way, not season 1. Hunter and Richard did the segment where they went over some anonymous practices, and this was one of them.
Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you in the outro.
Welcome back to another episode of Practice Underwater. I am your host, Dr. Matt Greeno. We are here with another owner doc who is graciously opening up his practice to us and our listeners and has contacted us to get some coaching on what he's struggling with his practice. So without further ado, Doc, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We're recording late on actually the NFL first night. So
I'm excited.
I know.
I'm excited.
We're finally back. My Patriots. Gonna win another one this year.
I'm a Dolphins fan, and we will be the number 1 pick next year. So
yes.
It'll be good.
Well, there's some good quarterbacks coming out, so I hope the worst for you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you contacted us. We put out a little feeler on the Facebook saying we're looking for people to come on here. You contacted us saying you're very interested. What did you see in this for you, and what are you looking to get out of it?
Mostly trying to figure out what you guys see from all the analytics stuff. I don't have any software and stuff like that. We run different reports overall just manually, but really just trying to get a outsider's perspective, because a lot of times you get too close to the numbers and you really can't see exactly what's going on and trends, and just starting to spin my wheels and trying to figure out where to go next overall.
Yeah, I totally get that. Especially when, we're dentists, we're working in the practice so much, it's kind of tough to get that like bird's eye view and step away from it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, give our audience a little bit about your background, how you got started with this practice, and then where you're at now.
Yeah, so right out of school, went right into associateships. Started out at a Medicaid office, there for like 3 months, hated every second of it. Knew it was not for me. Jumped into running a practice for a solo doc that owned 5 different offices, doing $1 million, about 4 months out of school. So I was just doing that, and then realized that really wasn't for me. And so I jumped into another associateship where it was a little bit better as far as just trying more of a mentorship, but I realized it wasn't going to be long-term being able to buy in, which was ultimately one of my goals. And so then I moved on to the practice that I bought. I worked there for about a year and then took over, and I've owned the practice now for about 2 years overall.
Awesome. Congrats on the 2-year mark.
Yeah, it's been a grind, I will say that.
Well, tell us a little bit about kind of where your practice is at. Tell us a little about your practice and kind of where you're trying to take everything.
It's doing good, I guess, as far as numbers wise. I feel like it's not up to where I want it to be. When I purchased it, it was doing 1.8. So it was quite a big practice overall. Thought that I would be able to keep up with that. The previous doctor was doing a lot of bigger procedures, all on 4 and wisdom teeth, and don't currently do either of those procedures. But I was pretty much running the office by myself, and he was sort of coming in and just doing a couple days a week. So I thought I'd be able to do a little bit more on production, and then maybe bring in someone else for some of those outside procedures, but it never really worked out that way. And I've just been trying to manage it on my own, because whenever I try to bring someone in, it just hasn't worked out overall.
Okay, so the owner doc, he was at 1.8. That was just a solo doctor, him and hygienist. That's it.
Yeah, it was me running it mostly. It did 2.1 in 2015, and then I came in and ran it for a year, and we did 1.8. But he had another satellite office that he was working out of, and he would just run in between the two, basically doing IV sedation, implants, and wisdom teeth, and sort of that stuff.
So when you did the 1.8, that was a little bit of him also working in the practice while you were full time?
Yeah, it was him doing, I think it was like 400,000 overall.
Okay. And then when you bought it, did you ever have another dentist working other than him?
It was just me the whole time. Yeah. So it was just me. I tried reaching out to different people to do wisdom teeth. And then I found some people, it was hard to really keep them busy enough with us we're 97% PPO. So a lot of the oral surgeons or people that I talked to didn't want to do it for that low of rates either. So it just wasn't worth it.
Now, were you like stepping in that office? That seemed, a pretty big office from when you started there. Were you kind of running everywhere? Was there more patients that you can handle, or how did that work?
I took over for a doctor who had left for him. So he had always had the associate model, and she was doing 1 million on her own as far as production. And so I just sort of stepped into that role and just took over where she sort of started over.
So what is kind of like the end goal with the practice? Is it to have other dentists in there with you, or is it to get it down into a really productive solo?
That's where I'm sort of struggling with my vision with it overall. Right now, like I said, we did take every insurance under the sun. We were 97% insurance, and just seeing the reimbursement rates versus how much we're doing, and it's just not really where I want to go. So we have started to cut insurances, just trying to figure out when's the right time to bring in a doctor. I think I'm leaning more towards the partnership route versus an associateship, but I know both have their own pros and cons with it. So I'm just trying to weigh that and figure out when's the right time. My goal is to grow the office, but at the same time, I think I'm sort of going in both directions with growing the office and cutting insurances, trying to weigh that.
So you're thinking grow it to like X point, and then you're ready to bring on a partner.
Yeah, because we have 2,500 active patients now, 18-month numbers there. So my goal was to get to 3,000. That was sort of a 2019 goal with cutting 3 insurance groups. Those were some of the big goals this year. Like I said, we're still at we started at 2,400. I don't know if that was accurate or not, just depending on the software. But we're currently at 2,500, and my thought is that at 3,000, it would be I'll be booked out enough, and it'll be time to bring in another doctor.
Right. So say push comes to shove, which is a more important goal for you? Getting to the 3,000 or dropping more insurances?
Dropping more insurances, because I want to be working. I want to work smarter, not harder overall. That's my big goal.
Okay, so it's not so much. It's not just the patient size; it's also the quality and level of patients that you're having.
Yeah, That's the other struggles. I don't want to just be a $10 million office. That's not really my end game. And then have overhead at 70%. I'd rather be doing less numbers and have 50% overhead. Would definitely be my end game, and I think that would make me happier.
And talk a little bit about the team you got there.
So we have an EFTA and an assistant.
I'm so jealous of you and your EFTAs. George rubs it in my face all the time.
My EFTA tried to get a sub yesterday, and she was out of town, and her sub did not show. So I was stuck running 2 columns and trying to keep up and do fillings, and I was just like, I cannot do this.
It's tough having to put in fillings, huh?
Yeah, it was just terrible. I know
it's
that's
awful. God.
Nope, I will never have that again, and yes, I will always have an EFTA.
So jealous.
But yeah, so we have an EFTA, an assistant. I have 3 full-time hygienists currently. and 2.5 up front. So,
do you think those EFTAs are integral to you being able to check 3 hygiene at once?
Absolutely. It was so difficult yesterday trying to get up in the middle and working on a quadrant full of fillings and getting called every 2 seconds and to do a hygiene check, because it's like, I don't know, it takes 2 minutes of surface for me to prep a tooth and then probably 8 minutes of surface for actually fillings. So it just completely throws off the whole schedule. And it's real easy to say, all right, it just keeps the appointment moving. And I think just from a patient perspective, it's like everything's moving smoothly. Whereas if you're like, okay, I'll be right back, it's hard to keep them not knowing that you're going and checking hygiene at the same time.
Yeah, it's keeping that continuity. I totally get that. Even with the EFTAs, do you feel like, are you running around a lot at the office during your day-to-day?
It depends. Some days things are really, really smooth. And I mean, those can even be like a $10,000 day. It's not even an issue. It's just all about the team members and the type of patients and stuff like that, and just getting systems in order. It's mostly just when systems are sort of falling apart are the rougher days overall. So not necessarily the dollar amount overall.
Right. It's like the one thing after the next going wrong. It's just snowballing.
And yeah, you get like 6 crown seats and it's just like all over the place and emergencies. And that's when it's a bigger issue. So it's more scheduling issues than anything.
Yeah. Well, you emailed over to me a very descriptive list of goals and your vision. Why don't you share some of that with the audience? I know you already mentioned the 3,000 patients. You already mentioned dropping some insurances. What are some of your other big goals, big visions for this office?
I definitely want to cut down number of days that I'm currently working 4.5 days, but I'd love to get down to 3 days just so I have more of a balance in life. But again, that's sort of one of my struggles, is trying to make sure that I'm not shrinking the practice from the 1.8 that it was doing before, and trying to make sure that I don't decrease the value that I paid for the office there overall. But I'd like to just bring in multiple providers ultimately so that I have sort of, like I said, more balance in my life. And I think my end goal is focusing on implants, sleep apnea, and more like full mouth reconstruction overall, and eventually becoming more of a fee-for-service office in general.
So what's all that for? What is that opening up?
I think it's just balance and time to be able to do what I want to do and do dentistry on my watch, and just being able to go and do whatever I want to do, whether it's travel, spend time with the family, whatever that looks like. Whereas right now, I just feel like I'm pushing real hard, and at the end of the day, like, the money's not necessarily going to make me happy, but like I said, I don't want to shrink the practice to the point where I overpaid for what I have.
Do you think you're in danger of that?
I do, because I think we're on pace for 1.5 this year, so I would technically have already shrunk the practice. It's more profitable than it was. I was at 72% overhead before. Now, last year we finished at 59%.
That's great.
Probably works out even wise as far as about the same take home as what he would have been doing. But I still just struggle with looking at other people, and you got Mark Costas' podcast and black belts and being 50% overhead. And it's just like, that just seems like such a 9% is a huge undertaking, especially when we're already ramped up and we're doing decent numbers already. So it's not as easy to just make that drop.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that caught me in the email you sent over to me. How, I think, and we've talked about this on the podcast, and a lot of us fall into it. We hear dentists who are, killing it, and we're like, we make that a negative about ourselves. Like, why am I not to that level? How haven't I got there? Like, I'm an owner. I've been owning for 2 years. Like, there's no excuse for me to not be a 50% overhead if, Mark Costas can do it, and all these other guys in his mastermind can do it. Talk a little bit about those feelings and kind of how you've internalized those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a constant struggle. I definitely have all these goals, and I get to it. I don't really celebrate, I'd say. Just last weekend, I paid off my student loan, which was awesome.
Hell yeah, man.
But really didn't take time to celebrate that. It's like so terrible. It's like been something I've been working on for the whole year, and then it's just like you get there and I'm like, all right, what's next? Like,
Buddy, if I was your coach, man, I would not let that fly. Wow. Well, how many loans did you pay off? How much?
it was around 300.
Wow, that's crazy. And that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's what it's all about right there.
I mean, that's the goal, is because once you don't have that big elephant on your shoulders, you can actually start to think about cutting back. I feel like you don't have the big debt and you can just sort of relax a little bit and still have another 1.2, 1.3 in debt with the business and other stuff, but it's not really, it's going to be paid off in 10 years. So that's not as big an issue.
You don't sound too excited about all this.
Like I said, I think that's my biggest issue, and I just need to find time to celebrate overall and try and figure out what it is that's going to make me happy. But I'm definitely learning that when you get to the end, it's not like a magical switch where you're going to be able to celebrate. You sort of really do have to enjoy the ride, and even if you get to, say, take home of $1 million or whatever that number is that you have in your head, it's really not going to make you, you're going to get there and be like, okay, what's next? Or what's going to make me happy? Why is this not making me happy?
You're probably thinking the spot you're at right now, this day, when you're in dental school, would be like unreal, killing it. Because, I mean, from what you just told me, I mean, simple math, but 600, 700 take home, something like that, just paid off $300,000 student loan within a few years of graduating. That's pretty incredible. It's
been good. And like I said, it would definitely be everything that I dreamed of and everything I wanted. And it's just like, I have all these goals. And I think that's also a struggle now, is I've done the website. I've done everything the past 2 years of getting a bunch of Google reviews and everything. And then I still keep looking on Instagram or somewhere else. And it's like, the grass is greener. They got this going. They got all this stuff. And I'm just like, but like I said, I'm also realizing like that's not going to necessarily make me happy. And I'm just trying to figure out like, okay, now that I'm here, what's next? Because I've accomplished all this stuff and now I don't know necessarily what I want to focus on or what's going to be that next sort of goal for me.
Before we get back to the episode, I wanted to take a minute and thank Practice by Numbers. Without their help and allowing us to set up the shared practices dashboard, a lot of what we do on Practice Underwater wouldn't be possible. I want to take a minute and highlight a clip from the episode that we did with Rohit, where we highlighted some of the metrics that really matter most.
One of my pet peeves that I want to share is that when you talk to some of the providers that are really successful out there, that have been in practice for 20, 30 years, and they roll your eyes when you say you're going to manage by numbers and this and that, they have successful practices, they have built them, and they have something right they have done. And when they tell you the only thing you need to look at is your bank account, it's absolutely incorrect. Okay? It pisses me off every time I look at that and I see that comment on the Facebook group, because success is not happenstance. It just doesn't happen.
It's kind of baffling. It's an everyday kind of thing where you're striving to improve, you're striving to tighten your systems, you're striving to know your practice better, and just to get in that kind of complacent mode is easy. I can see how it happens, because you're so in the wheel and you get overwhelmed with things that this isn't something you want to think about a lot of times. But it really is so important that people focus on this kind of thing.
I hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you guys are interested in trying out Practice by Numbers and looking at your practice through the Shared Practices dashboard, and there are many other dashboards, you can go to practicebynumbers.com and set up a free trial.
I want to come back to the celebration real quick, because I think it's a really important point, especially in your case. You mentioned that you just got to make the time for celebration. Is it the time that's the issue?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly what is the issue. I mean, we had our best month ever last month, and we'll celebrate with the team. And I like spoiling them with manicures or whatever it is. And I like taking time to celebrate.
About you, though.
But for me, I don't know. I don't really take the time to actually do that.
Well, what's the point of celebrating? Why do it at all?
To reflect on the journey.
If you just do it for the biggest milestones, then you're missing the whole process. And the process is just not, it's not enjoyable at that point. It's not fun. It's not exciting. It's not like a game. And in your case, you haven't even celebrated your biggest milestone yet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'll give you the weekend. In this weekend, how are you going to celebrate paying off these student loans?
Oh, man. I think, my struggle with that, answering that question is I could say something simple like, let's go out to a nice dinner or do something like that. But I have a 1-year-old child, and it is just a challenge to find the time and finding a babysitter or doing stuff like that. So it's more, I guess in the back of my head, I could say I'm going to go do this, but in reality, I just know that it's like, okay, there's a bunch of hurdles in order to make that happen, I guess.
What's stopping you? Because you're telling me some superficial things that are all easily fixable. You can call the babysitter, you can make reservations, you can rearrange what you need to rearrange. But what's stopping you?
Honestly, I think those are the things. It's just more of the hassles of trying to set up all those things to jump through the hoops. It's easier to just sort of keep going and not have to plan all this extra stuff to celebrate.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk like I know what it's like to have a young child, which I don't.
No.
So it's being a business owner with a new child like that. I'm sure that's an incredible hindrance on your time as far as being able to work on the office and your personal well-being and all that. So,
well, and I enjoy just spending the time with my family. It's not like I feel like I need to go do something big, I guess is sort of also the feeling is like I don't feel like I need to do that overall. It's like it's not going to necessarily make me happier by going out and buying a nice car or going out for that nice dinner, but I also know that you need to take time to celebrate and reflect on the journey and do that stuff. So that's the struggle there overall.
All right. So what could be a celebration that maybe you don't even need to leave the house for? What's a celebration that's going to make you able to do it, but not have to, take time away from family? And
I think it would just be sitting back and just enjoying a beer and actually just sort of watching the games tonight or doing something where it's just taking some me time and just taking a step back and reflecting on it and knowing that it's all worth it and that all the struggles and stuff like that, like looking back on what you want and all the goals that have been accomplished in that.
Do you want me to check in with you to see if you've done it?
Sure.
All right. I'll send you a text.
All right.
Good. One other thing I wanted to touch on before we pivot to the metrics and a little bit more about practice specific stuff is a lot of what I got from your emails and talking to you here so far is holding a lot of negative emotions about past goals that maybe you came up short on, that are kind of weighing you down and, really just kind of like a heaviness I'm feeling. You mentioned a couple of the collection goals of trying to hit the 1.5 that you weren't able to do the last couple years. And, the fact of you buying this practice at one level and now it's at a lower level. Talk a little bit about your relationship to goals you don't reach.
Yeah, I guess my viewpoint on a lot of my goals and just in general is it's if I set it, I'm going to accomplish it. And so when I don't, I never want to give up on a goal. It's just sort of I'll push that off, put that onto my plate again, and we'll just keep doing that. So I guess maybe the heaviness comes from feeling like there's so many things I want to accomplish and get done and a little bit spinning my wheels because I'm not accomplishing them, all of them overall. And
yeah, I get it. You're an achiever and you have these goals and you have all the resources and the ability to hit them. And then in some of them, you don't hit them.
Yep.
And you don't know why, which makes it even harder. So you're just kind of at a loss.
Yeah.
Okay. I totally get that because I struggle from the same thing. That's how I get it.
Yep.
We carry the past into the future because we're holding on how it went before. And it's really about acceptance and moving on and going forward. So if you're open to a quick exercise, I have a couple
Sure.
questions that I think might help.
Okay.
All right. Just a series of a few questions. Yes, I am reading from something. Audience. So first one, what should it be?
Say that one more time.
What shouldn't be?
Shouldn't?
Shouldn't. Yeah. What is something that occurred that shouldn't have, and it shouldn't have been that way? For instance, you had a goal for 1.5 million collections. You didn't
Yeah.
hit it. That
Yeah.
could be something that shouldn't have been. You should have hit it. You have the practice. You have all the ability. You didn't get there.
Okay. I
What
guess overhead not being at 50%.
Okay.
Maybe not being as far on my implant journey. And I'd say the third one would be not having another doctor in my office already.
Great. What are the thoughts, feelings, and body sensations going on right now as you talk about those?
They are saying, why haven't you accomplished those? If other people can do it, why can't you?
Yeah. Very heavy again. All right. Next one. What are the facts going on right now? If an impartial third party came and listened to this, what would they say about what happened?
Well, they would say that I'm still doing a great job overall, and that necessarily those things aren't going to actually make your practice that much more successful overall, I guess, and not necessarily get you to where your overall goal is. It's just sort of an extra headaches that you're going to have to deal with potentially.
Yeah, and they could also say your overhead was at 59%. You don't have another doctor in there. You're at X point in your implant journey.
Yep.
Just things that are. Minus the whole story behind them.
Sure.
So separate from where things are now that we just talked about, what is your commitments in these areas?
My commitments need to be to set goals, but not necessarily have to hold myself to them. I mean, as far as don't have to worry about getting to them by a specific time frame.
Is that really what you think?
Probably not. I mean, it's
Don't give me the answer you think I want to hear. I'm asking the answer for you.
I think it really comes down to I need to really take time to reflect actually on what I thought I wanted 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and realize that maybe I'm at that point, and continue to say, okay, you're doing a good job, and listen to other people that tell you that I am doing a good job overall. It's okay to be where I'm at, and it's just part of the process of getting to where I'm trying to get to. It's not going to all happen overnight, I guess.
Right. The whole point of this really is just to kind of change your being and relationship around these failed goals. It's not kind of to say it's not useful to have them, or you need to get rid of anything with an end date. It's more acceptance and then moving on.
Sure.
And then declaring, which I'm going to ask you again, what you are committed to in these areas. So collections, overhead percentage, implant journey, other doctors. What's the commitment there going forward?
My commitment, my plan is still to get to all these goals overall. I really think that all of them are attainable. I just can't necessarily have them all right now. It may take a little bit longer than next year, and I have these big goals, but when I don't hit them that year, it's not the end of the world overall. And it's just a journey, and hopefully as long as I'm making progress towards it, you can celebrate that and just keep working that way.
Okay. Final question. So looking at just the commitment you mentioned just then, and not the circumstances, not the history, not what happened in the past years ago, what is the next appropriate actions to take?
Planning out what things have happened, what things need to happen, and reflecting on the fact that I have come pretty far, and just like I'm jealous of other people, there's going to be people that are jealous of me, and I need to be happy in my own boots overall and enjoy the journey overall.
All right, nice. Some personal reflection. What other like specific actions could you take around getting overhead down, raising collections, getting more towards another doctor, moving forward to implants? Where could you start there on those? You pick one of them or all of them.
And I think that's where I'm struggling, is I feel like I'm sort of spinning my wheels on all of these things, and I'm pushing on all of them at the same time. And that's sort of where I'm starting to feel burnt out on it, is because I'm pushing in so many different directions. And I think that's sort of where I'm at overall. Is I'm still doing it, I'm still pushing, I'm still training everyone to try and get to these overall goals right now.
Okay. So let's make a goal for by the end of the call. We'll have some actions for you going forward with these end goals in mind.
Cool.
Perfect. So how does it usually go with like the goals you set? Like, how do you go about accomplishing them?
So normally I'll have normally try to do like 3 big goals, and try to have just some basic like action steps that I have for them overall, similar to I have like just step by step, where it was like hire a third hygienist, or trying to look at different things like getting a 3D printer, doing medical billing, being booked out for 3 weeks. I just have all these sort of intermediate little goals there that I sort of reverse engineered, trying to think that would be the next steps. And I try to do that like once a year overall. And sometimes the steps change, or I add different steps in between there, because I realize, okay, I'm not going to get to that point quite yet.
Okay. So you have the 3 big goals, and then under each one of them, you have the action steps to get there?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And you set those out the beginning of each year?
Beginning of each year. But now that, like I said, I've accomplished a lot of those bigger goals, I'm struggling to find what goal to set next overall. And it's not like I don't necessarily care about, okay, now I'm at 1.5, let's get to 2. Like, it's not, like, I don't see an end game there. And like, I don't see like that's going to make me happy. Getting to 2.5, going to 5, like that, I don't see that necessarily making you that much happier overall.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, those are just numbers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what is the important thing? What's the most important thing to you?
My biggest thing would be balance, and just having some time off. And
so is that, to be clear, is that fewer days of the week of work, or is that more vacation weeks off? What does that look like?
Both. I mean, like I said, I think my end game would be working 3 days a week and having another doctor in there, so that the practice doesn't completely drop down. But I also struggle with, okay, I don't necessarily want to take a step back on earning income, especially early on in my career. Just being 5 years out, you just hear about this is the time to sort of do some of the work, but it's just still a fine balance. So,
is the income more about the practice, like valuation, like how you said you bought it for 1.2, you don't want to devalue it?
I think that's the biggest thing. I can't stand buying like I would hate to buy a house for $300,000 and have to sell it for $100,000. That would just drive me nuts overall.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a failure almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what about like your life, as far as money you need to feel sufficient and building toward your goals? Are you at a good level there? Could you handle any less? Kind of.
I guess I also feel my wife currently works. She makes 6 figures, so she brings in a good income, and so that definitely helps. But I do feel like there'll be a little bit more of a pinch if she stops working and she's sort of starting to talk about that. So that's a little bit of a pressure point for me as well. But I think deep down, I don't spend a whole lot of money and don't feel like I need to. The material stuff isn't going to be what makes me happy. It's more hanging out with friends and family and stuff like that. So I would much rather just work 3 days a week and be able to go do dentistry, do implants, take CE, do that stuff. And I think that would make me happy overall, and not having to feel like I'm working 4.5 days a week and grinding and seeing a ton of patients. So
Yeah, you're someone who values experiences, sounds like,
Yep.
versus like the material things.
Yeah.
The 3 days a week seems like one of your big overarching goals. And with that, wanting to keep at least where your income's at, if not grow it, is also important to you. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Where do you want to go from here? I have some notes about the practice. Anything else you want to talk about in this realm?
No, I'm good for just talking about the numbers, unless there's other sort of issues or something that you're sort of seeing or want to talk about. I'm pretty much an open book.
I appreciate that. I was gonna acknowledge you at the end, but I'll say it now, for being very open with all this. You know, you were so open in your email, and you're so open to feedback that I think it's a lot of doctors could learn from this attitude.
Well, thank you.
I did want to touch on something as far as a reflection of what I'm seeing with your goals. Do you ever delegate anything?
I actually feel like I delegate a lot. I feel like I am always looking for ways that my team can actually take something off of my plate. I want, or F does, I want my hygienist to be taking impressions for night guards, doing sealants, doing everything that they can. Another one of my goals is to train all my hygienists so that they can actually assist with me. So if there's ever downtime, they can see the emergency patient and stuff like that. So I actually feel like I delegate a lot, but at the same time, I get frustrated when things don't get done quickly.
How about with your bigger goals? I get delegating the practice. Sounds like you do a great job, but that was super important. How about with like the big goals, the action steps below them?
And try to have big 3 goals for the office that sort of underlie those. And so I try to put it out there to the team. And we do have each week, the team sort of states a win and an office goal and a personal goal. I do try to delegate it that way, but at the same time, I feel like I'm trying to push through all these goals at the same time, giving them just like these 3 goals, and then I'm still working on like 5 or 6 on my own to just sort of keep pushing the practice to where I want it to get to.
Yeah, because as owners, we're going to have capacity for more goals, more things to do. We care more, we got more invested. Totally reasonable to kind of diminish the goals for them, at least the number of them, and then take on more yourself.
Yeah, but it definitely gets exhausting.
All right, great.
All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of that interview with our mystery doc. As you can see, he's dealing with a lot of guilt over not getting the practice to what it was when he bought it, and having this $1.5 million goal for a couple of years now and still not hitting it. And that's really kind of getting in his head and taking out a lot of the enjoyment for the practice he does have in his hands, and how amazing it is in its current model. So George, you mentioned a little in the intro how this is one of the first ones where it's actually a decrease in what the seller was doing. Talk a little bit about the unique scenario that this stock is in.
I think the part that surprised him the most is not the dip. It's the fact that he was surprised about the dip. He's losing, I think he exactly said, $400,000 of production in all on fours and wisdom teeth and stuff he just doesn't do. And so what else are we expecting? It seems like he's kind of right on pace to keep doing what they've been doing minus those procedures. And one of the big things that Hunter always talks about, and I haven't listened back to that episode, but he always talks about just taking out the production that you can't reproduce and value in the practice without it there. So I don't think that this is more of like anything that this guy did wrong to cause the dip. This is just what was totally expected. And paying $1.2 million for a practice that does 1.4 is totally fine if it makes sense. And this guy makes good money, so it makes sense. So I think that guilt is not really, nothing bad happened. I mean, he just doesn't do procedures and he still makes good money. So like, I don't get what the problem is.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I reflected to him in this episode is that there is no problem really. I mean, that's exactly my scenario. I paid 1.25 for a $1.55 million practice. Like it's pretty much right in line. And I think that goes to what we preach about looking at these acquisitions is taking out some of the procedures you don't do. Also, say if it's a Delta Premier and you're going to be a Delta PPO, kind of valuing it that way. So there's a lot that goes into these evaluations that would point out some of these things that are going on that might be different once you take over.
And that goes to like this point of normalizing a situation or like coming in with a proper expectation. Imagine if he had come in with his advisors telling him, this is pretty much going to do about 1.4 because you're losing $400,000 of this types of production. And then when he does 1.4, be like, oh, we're right on pace. Like that's the proper expectation that should have been set. The fact that like it's unrealistic to think that this guy can grow an extra 30%, that's just not there.
Yeah, agreed. And we talked a lot about his lack of celebration for his accomplishments. This is one of my big things. So, George, talk about how you're able to do this in your own life and practice as far as feeling some gratitude for where you are and what you've accomplished along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think that's the inner Matt in me is starting to do that. When I first started working with Matt, I would tell him something happened. He'd be like, okay, how are you going to celebrate? I'm like, man, this guy keeps asking me that question. That's getting annoying. Then it started becoming this thing where like now I have this little board of these like celebration things I'm planning on. Matt told me to break them up into small, medium, and large. So anytime something small happens, I have like my list of small things and I do one of them or I get one of them or whatever it is. That point that you made in the episode was really spot on. It's like the journey never ends. And that's something that I got to talk to guys about all the time because they accomplish so much and they're like so worried about what's next that they don't take a minute. And the analogy I always use is when you go hiking. I mean, that's like an Arizona thing. I don't know if you guys go hiking in New York, but we go hiking.
We have mountains here.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Well, when we go hiking, you kind of turn around and look at how far you've come. And you're like, oh man, I didn't realize I've been walking for this long. Like, I've come pretty far away. Like, now I don't want to go back all the way over there. The reality is that that's what happens in your life. Like, if this guy were to turn around and say, hey, look, I didn't even think I'd get into dental school. And now I make $600,000 to $700,000 a year. I'd be pretty proud of that if I could take a look at that from the perspective of where I started. It just seems like he's fixated on where he isn't and where everybody else is. And, I love that expression. That comparison is the thief of joy. I think it's interesting how many, and this is like, if anybody listening to the show takes one thing home, is that money will not make you happy. Like this guy makes all the money that he needs. He's not happy. Comparison is part of that reason where he's taking it away. His overhead is not low enough and that makes him feel bad. And learning to be happy is way harder than learning to make money.
Yeah. And I think we're running into this a lot more than I ever thought of people like talking about hearing stories on podcasts and hearing stories on Facebook and like comparing it to their current situation and how that sours their appreciation for where they're at themselves. And usually it's in a great place, but they're like, well, this guy's doing better and that guy's doing better and that gal's doing better. It's like, well, what am I doing? And it's something I didn't really expect. I know I have it in myself. I guess I didn't really realize how prevalent it is with docs kind of in our situations.
Yeah. And I love that we can sort of, change their name, change their voice and be honest. Like the reason why that's there is because nobody's honest. Like people aren't going to listen to Practice Underwater and be like, man, I really want to be that guy. Like I just don't think that's going to be a big part of it because we're being honest. Like, but when you just show the highlights, then you want to be that guy because all you're seeing is the best stuff.
For sure. And George, I know you wanted to comment on this doc's use of the EFTAs. You're a huge EFTA proponent, so I know you had a little tweak for him.
So he said that there was this one day that his EFTA wasn't there and he had to place composites and check for 3 hygienists. Pro tip, 2 EFTAs solves that problem. Whenever one of them is missing, the other one is there. And they almost act like a second doc where like, you'll prep with, just a non-EFTA assistant and then they'll just come in and fill and then you and the other assistant are moving on somewhere else. It's a great sequence having multiple EFTAs so that you don't have to place any fillings at any time.
Wow, that sounds like heaven.
Every time Matt places a composite, he's just pissed.
Do we have any like high up like connections in New York State or any of these states that are like so brain dead that they can't allow this stuff?
In New York, are hygienists allowed to give patients now?
They are, but they can't give blocks, which is the one thing I would really want them to do.
Yeah, blocks. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I almost avoid blocks. Like I love hygienists giving blocks. It's awesome.
I'm going to see if I can call in a favor or something from someone. I'm going to ask around. We're going to see if we can get this changed up because this is some BS.
All right, guys. Well, I'm really excited for part 2. I think it just really seems like a Matt and George conversation, solo versus group practice. Like you'll start to see some of the themes of it in this episode, but next episode, I think it just becomes a little bit louder. And that's a discussion I'm very excited about. So I'm excited for next week's episode. Do you have anything else you want to add, Matt?
No, we got it all. We'll see you guys next week. Practice underwater.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Practice Underwater. We'll see you guys next week.
If you're interested in one-on-one coaching with either Dr. George Hariri or Dr. Matt Garino, our contact emails are in the show notes.
And if you're interested in being on Practice Underwater as a guest, where we could look at your practice anonymously, you can go ahead and contact the email in the show notes and follow those directions to get on the show. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next week on Practice Underwater.